Live from Multispeed Technologies, the show that puts you, the listener, in the driver's seat because you are the content. The phone lines are open to be a part of the program. It's a free call. 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 1-855-450-6624. Give me a call and we'll have a conversation about your tech questions or business and tech questions. Linux advocate, above all else, small business owner, and now host of the only radio show centered around you, the listener. Welcome to the Ask Noah Show. My name is Noah Chalai. So good evening to you guys. Happy to be here. Another episode of the Ask Noah Show kicking off this hour, and I'm excited to say I've been living on Ubuntu 17.10 this week. More on that as this show continues. By the way, tonight we're doing something special. Tonight we are going to try to make an extended effort to include the people that can't usually be here with us. We understand that we have a wide, diverse audience from all around the world, and some of you guys don't have access to a telephone or software that will allow you to place a call. And so I have been working all night on a project that I've been told by a couple people wasn't even possible, and we have somehow connected our call-in system to the Mumble Room. So if you're not familiar with what Mumble is, it is a free and open source communication software. A lot of people would argue far better than TeamSpeak, which is kind of its competitor. It tries to be as good as Mumble. And I have been a huge fan of Mumble for a long time, and I've made a lot of friends through our Mumble server. The community Mumble server, it is I believe it's mumble.jupiterbroadcasting.org, and you have to change the port number to end with a 4, and then sign in, create a username, and you should be able to connect. We're going to be taking those calls as the show goes on. Joel starts us off this hour. Hey, Joel, welcome to the Ask Noah Show.
Hey, Noah. One of the most interesting things I've heard reported about Ubuntu 17.10 is the new captive portal feature. I'm curious if that would help me out with my connecting to my university Wi-Fi. I've sent you an email with the screenshots of what I'm experiencing. Basically, the gist of it is I can only connect through to the university wireless via Firefox instead of my preferred browser, which is Vivaldi. Any way to alleviate this inconvenience, or is this just sort of Firefox being the IE of the OS? Mm-hmm. The distro I'm using is Ubuntu Mate 17.10, and I'm curious if the captive portal feature is across all Ubuntu flavors or just only for the main Ubuntu spin.
Yeah. Well, so there are a couple different ways that a captive portal works, Joel. Excuse me. The first is a simple HTTP redirect, and it returns a 302 to the client, and then it sends them to the captive portal. Now, that method of captive portal, you should be able to do that on any usable modern web browser. So my guess is your university is not doing it this way. The second way is redirecting the client using an ICMP redirect, and the final way is redirecting them using DNS, of course. My suspicion is it's one of the last two that your university is using. So what can you do? Well, so you have a couple questions in there. So to the best of my understanding, the built-in captive portal system is a function of GNOME itself, not Ubuntu. So the reason that they are saying that 17.10 includes the captive portal feature is because 17.10 in fact includes GNOME. But I believe you're going to have to be on GNOME specifically to get that to work. And again, I'm not a developer and I don't play one on TV, but I think it's just an embed of WebKit WebView. And somebody, please correct me on that if I'm wrong. A couple of things on captive portals. We use them all the time at Altispeed Technologies for our hotels because we are forced to by the franchise requirements. Now, if you are one of the people that force captive portals on people, I invite you tonight to go die in a fire. If you are one of the marketing folks that push captive portals off on some of these places, the last place a person is going to spend money, let me help you with this. The last place a person is going to spend money is at the website of a hotel or restaurant that they are already visiting and using their Wi-Fi. That's why they're using their Wi-Fi, because they have already purchased a good or service. And so your captive portal is just serving to annoy people like me. But to anyone out there that has to contend with the captive portal, and we do, make sure you're not using HTTPS addresses. So that's one thing I see, especially in airports a lot. If you're using an HTTPS, then basically what happens is you have to use a website that doesn't use SSL, because the computer starts to suspect it's being attacked. And yes, before anyone says it, I do realize that this directly goes against my previously stated mission of every site being encrypted with, SSL and Let's Encrypt. But for the time being, it is what it is. This is what we have. So micaptive.com is a really great site. That's what we recommend to our clients. micaptive.com, amicaptive.com. It's a site that will simply just show you a picture of a guy if you are online, or redirect you to the captive portal if one exists. Overall, but yeah, that's really the only advice I really have for you. And thanks so much for the call. Charlie is with us, joining us from the Mumble Room, our Mumble Bridge, the Ask Noah Mumble Bridge, we'll call it. Hey, Charlie, it's been a long time coming, but welcome to the Ask Noah Show.
Hey, Noah, thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, and now just to clarify, you are one of the guys that was not able to join with a regular phone call, because you actually live in Australia, so you're calling us from literally across the world.
That's right. Yep.
What time is it there, if I may ask?
9 o'clock in the morning.
Wow. Okay. Well, so at least we're not keeping you up in the middle of the night or anything. So go ahead with your question. How can we help?
Before I get to the question, I just thought I'd let you and the viewers know that I actually went through 12 different distributions of Linux on my computer in 2 months.
Wow, 12 distributions. Which one did you start with?
So I started off with MintMate, then I went to Solaris, then I went to Debian 9.1, then I went to Ubuntu 17.4, then Debian 9.1, 9.2, then SteamOS, then Manjaro, then Pop, then a couple others, then Ubuntu 17.10 Beta 2, and I tried a few others that were mentioned on DistroWatch as well.
Man, you are the Australian version of my 14 or 15-year-old self. You are one dedicated Linux user. So, so you have gotten to these 14 distributions. You finally landed on one that is working for you, I take it? Hopefully, after all that work?
I found out of all the distributions, my best positive experience with software that works, Steam that works because I'm a PC gamer, and HDMI issues I've had because I've got AMD R9 380 video card, which is not exactly working out of the box in Linux on some situations. But I've also got two screens. But the first screen is a 27-inch HDMI. The second screen is 19-inch VGA. Some distributions of Linux don't power on the primary screen. Some don't power on the second screen, I found. But of all the distributions, the best experience was Ubuntu 17.10 Beta 2.
Excellent, excellent. So you and I are on the same distribution at the moment then?
I'm actually back on Windows 7.
Oh, you are? Okay. All right. Well, listen, nobody can give you a hard time for not giving it a good effort, right? Like, I mean, you are like the most dedicated Linux user I think I've talked to in a long time.
Yeah, I've talked to several people on several, like, IRC rooms, Mumble rooms, Reddit, you name it, I've asked everywhere. And for my custom PC, I couldn't find a solution to get everything working out of the box for me. But what I have read is kernel 4.14 is making some massive improvements in the AMD driver situation. AMD has said, and this was, I think, on Phoenix or Oh My God Ubuntu site, that they are working on installing Linux, making it easier for the AMD drivers.
Okay.
So the problem I have today, coming back to that, would be Samba. I've got a Toshiba Chromebook, which has been modded with CBIOS, which is running Gallium OS. And its Samba can't talk to my PC, which has Windows 7 on it at the moment, and my flatmate's PC with Windows 8.
Okay. So Samba is let me ask you something. Is there a particular reason that you want to use Samba on the computer itself? Like, would you consider using like a file server like FreeNAS?
Well, the Chromebook only has a 16 gig SSD.
Right.
And I want to be able to look at stuff stored on my Windows 7 PC, which has two 4 terabyte drives. And then what happens in this house is the Chromebook is actually the media center.
Okay.
So it's connected to the TV and the 5.1 amplifier, and we watch all the content in the house in the lounge room on the Chromebook. But it's not seeing the Windows shares. So at the moment, what we're doing is copying stuff onto a USB stick and watching it off the Chromebook that way.
Yeah, that's painful just listening to it. So the share that you're trying to connect to is hosted on a Windows machine. You're trying to access it from Linux, or the other way around?
Yeah, so from the Chromebook, which is running Gallium OS on the Chromebook, we're trying to access my machine, which is Windows 7, and a Windows 8 computer as well. And it is also, I think, Class C, they call it, or it could be Class A. It's the 10.0.0 number instead of the typical 192.168.0 IP range.
Okay, well, the IP shouldn't really have anything to do with it, but I rarely, if ever, see it, because what you're talking about is really the Samba client. Most of the time where the problem is in the Samba configuration itself, but that's usually when you're hosting it. So a couple of questions. On the Windows computer that you're trying to access the Samba share on, do you have an account created with a password?
Yeah, we've actually, on both PCs, we've enabled guests, and then we've also set up secondary accounts and shared all those, and you can see all the shares between the Windows boxes.
Mm-hmm.
Right, like, for example, on my Windows 7 box, I made a user called Chromebook, and the password is Chromebook, and that just has one share on it, so the Chromebook can see it, but it can't see it.
Yeah, that's okay. So,
but the Windows 8 box can see that share and log in as that name.
What happens when you go on the Chromebook? When you open up the network browser, if you click on Browse Networks, do you see the client at all on the network? Do you even see the Windows client?
The Chromebook in front of me.
Yeah. So that's one thing I would check. I'll walk you through a couple different things that you can check. First, I would click Browse the network and see if you can actually see that client. If you can, great. If you can't, I would look to. Actually, I would do this. The first thing I would do is shut off the Windows firewall. Let's make sure that isn't a problem at all. Then I would go and
the firewall's off.
Yeah, okay. Then I would go and see if I could browse the client. If I can, try and double-click on that client and see if you can see a list of the shares. If you can't, if you go up to, it depends on exactly, which distribution, which file browser you're using, but there's always a way that you can go in and manually type in SMB:// the IP address / and the share name. That, in almost all cases, should prompt you for credentials to log into the Windows box.
Okay, I just clicked on that Windows networking thing in the file Explorer type thing, and it said failed to open Windows networking. Failed to retrieve share list from the server. No such file or directory.
Can you browse any Samba shares whatsoever on that on that Chromebook?
No.
Okay, so it is a problem with the Samba client then. So that and that's something that I can't solve on a 5-minute radio call. But what I can do is I can put you back on hold and I'll have Sarah pick up some of your particulars, and then what we can do is we can actually get a ticket open for you through Altispeed Technologies. We'll get a technician assigned, and he or she will work with you to see if we can get that, whatever the problem with that Samba client is, because that is definitely where the issue lies. Again, 855-450-NOAH. That's 855-450-6624. Or join us in the Mumble Room, mumble.jupiterbroadcasting.org. Rob is calling from Texas. Hey, Rob. Welcome to the Ask Noah Show.
Oh, hello, sir. How are you?
Hey, pretty good. Good to speak with a Texan. How are you doing, sir?
Oh, very good. To begin with real fast, you and everybody at Jupiter got me back into Linux. I'm very happy about that. But my question tonight is about bandwidth control. I tried to set up a Squid server to do that bandwidth control, but no matter what I could do, no matter what I did, I couldn't get it to limit control between the devices in my LAN. So I was going to ask you, what would be my best option to do that?
You know, my suggestion, so what you're trying to do is what we call QoS, or quality of service. And basically what we are doing is we are telling given network devices, either every device can use this maximum amount of bandwidth, or this device, because it's, you know, streaming something or whatever, like here at the studio, the transmit machine, the broadcast machine, that has first priority. So everything else in the network will shut down, up to and including our call server sometimes, which I found out last week was kind of a problem. And so, but it prioritizes the traffic of the broadcast machine going out. And we can, the easiest way to set that up, Rob, is with a device from Mikrotik, Mikrotik, and I will have a link for you in the show notes. But basically there is a router called the Hex. I believe it's, let me look it up here. I think it's the 750 Hex. Let's see here. Mikrotik 750, RB750, RB750 Hex, something like that. Yeah, so there are two. You can get the RB750 GR3, and I have a link to that in the show notes for you. Or there's that one's $59, or there's a slightly cheaper one. They call it the Hex Lite. And it is a 5-port router. I think the difference between the two is the processor is not quite as heavy duty, but the Lite version has the same router OS. The Lite version is only $36. It's a really great little device, and it's a full-fledged enterprise-grade router. But what this particular router is going to do is it will let you do quality of service, or we call them queues in router OS. But it's very simple, straightforward to set up. And, you know, for any hotel chains, we're talking about how we have specific requirements to use captive portals. We also have specific requirements to use, there's a maximum that we're allowed, maximum speed we're allowed to let people use. And so that's what we do. We do it with queues in router OS. And there's plenty of YouTube tutorials on how to do that, and I'll include a link to this device in the show notes for you. And thanks for the call. Ken is calling from California. Hey, Ken, what's up?
Hi, Noah. Nice to meet you.
Hey, same. How can we help?
I had a question about kind of your experience with content publishing and your unique perspective as a technologist dad.
Mm-hmm.
I have two boys that are 8 and 10, and for the past year, they've been bugging me about creating their own YouTube channel, about gaming and other things. But I've been a little apprehensive about letting them dive into the online world.
Yep.
And kind of unsure about setting their perspective or their expectations right.
Yep.
And how to also protect them from, you know, if there are people commenting negatively on it or things like that. What is your kind of perspective on places to start, to look to how to set up right, and maybe to help guide them in it?
Yeah, it's no joke. It really isn't. There is actually one of my a good friend of mine. Actually, I wonder if I could get him on the show. I've worked with him on a couple different we've passed clients to him a couple different times. But basically, this guy's name is Tommy Jordan, and he runs a company called Twisted Networks. And Tommy wrote a very interesting article on protecting your kids. And again, I'll have that article linked in the show notes. It's not for the faint of heart. If you are, it's not. I mean, it's real life stuff that happens on the internet to parents that are not doing what Ken in California they're not asking those questions. Anyway, that's kind of a side rant, and it's useful information, and it will give you depth and understanding, full depth and understanding of the subject. To answer your specific question, what I do in particular is I don't let my kids post to YouTube. In fact, we moderate what videos and channels the kids can watch on YouTube, because you can find some really weird areas of YouTube. Not even like the outright stuff that is like, that's not kid appropriate. Like even the stuff that is appropriate, there's like they're adults and they dress up in like costumes, and it's weird. And so anyway, we have metered that to a certain extent. What I have done for my kids, because my son likes to play Minecraft, and he likes to make these videos in OBS of him playing Minecraft and narrate the whole thing. And what we did for him was we just set up a Telegram group, and we put some of our friends and family in there. and he is allowed to drop his videos into that Telegram group. Now, I'm the admin of the group, so I can choose, and my wife is too. We can choose what people are in that group, and so we control who is seeing his content. And it's interesting to watch how careless kids are with a webcam on. And that alone has enlightened me, watching, what happens when he thinks he's being careful, he thinks he's paying attention to what he's quote unquote putting out on the air. So yeah, as a parent, I would be worried about that. And as a parent, I would, take some serious steps to make sure that you know exactly what's going on there. There's other ways to do it. You could set up if he really wants to just see his name and the whole YouTube logo and stuff like that. There are ways you can upload videos and set the channel to private, so only people with an invite or certain invitations can see. I don't remember the project off the name of my head, Ken, but there's a project where you can basically set up your own self-hosted version of YouTube. I'll see if I can. I'm not promising that's going to make it in the show notes because I don't even remember what the name of it is. Maybe somebody in the chat room can help me. But there's a way that you can basically host your own YouTube, so you could set that up for him. Maybe all of those would be an option. Does that kind of answer your question? I'm sorry, I'm kind of all over the place. It's a touchy subject.
No, those are some good places to start.
Yeah, that's what I would check out. Now, I have dealt with this exact same thing myself. And it's frustrating as a parent because you want to encourage your kids to explore technology, to enjoy technology. I didn't have a lot of oversight when I was growing up because I knew more about the technology than the people that were supposedly having oversight. And I try to keep that in check and in balance. Just because I can get to a point where I could set up a management port on a switch and monitor every single packet that leaves my son's computer doesn't mean I should be doing that. And at the same time, I'm also, again, this Twisted Networks article on kids, it's one of those things where you got to be careful. Charlie, we'll bring him back from the Mumble Room, has a comment about the previous call. Go ahead, Charlie.
G'day, I'd just like to pitch in. I've actually been doing video game footage on YouTube for 5 years, and something for the younger audience is you can do video footage perfectly fine without a webcam. Like, that keeps a lot of people protected with their identity, no matter if they're 14 or 40. And you can use OBS to create content which is free and open source program. It works on Linux, Mac, and Windows. And you can even disable comments on your whole YouTube channel. You can also assign other people to moderate that for you. So the parents could moderate the communication for the younger person.
Yeah, that's true. And, the other thing is, too, is that, and thank you, I appreciate that. Everything you said is spot on. The chat room is saying, YouTube is not necessarily where the technology is. That's not necessarily where they learn about technology. I think that there's a lot of truth to that. I think if we actually sit down and think about it, what are they really getting off of posting this video online? And like you said, so my son's new laptop, his ThinkPad, does not have a webcam. I assume that's the last laptop I'm ever going to be able to purchase that doesn't have a webcam built in. And so I've done exactly that. He just doesn't use the USB one anymore, and so everything he does is just screen capturing. But a lot of that, is going to be, and I just know from my kids, they want to see themselves. They want to see their picture. They want to say the things like my channel and subscribe, all that stuff. And so, that it's one of those things where it's a fine line to balance. But I think especially those of us that are technically literate, those of us that, have the upper edge, I think we have a real chance to let them experience technology, with safe boundaries. Jay is calling from Pennsylvania. Hey, Jay, welcome to the Ask Noah Show.
Hi. So I just have a question about what you think about the general technicality level of the technology podcasts that are out there. And regarding JB, I've recommended JB to my friends, and most of them have found it a bit high, like a bit above their technical level. I mean, they're college students, so they understand that that they may not be there yet, but they just found it a bit off-putting about how high level it was. And you can't just put out a podcast about this is what LS does. I mean, that's what you try to do sometimes. On the Ask Noah Show, just make it simple, like the TLDR. for the people who are just trying to learn, for the newbies, but for the rest of the shows like TechSnap and and BSD even. I mean BSD goes over my head, but I can still understand some of the stuff. So what do you think about that?
So part of what you're talking about is identifying your target audience, right? Like you have to know who your listeners are and what they expect from you. And when I entered the space, when we had a chance to reboot the Ask Noah show, we knew we were going to do some things a little differently than we had done them in the past. Different than we'd done it with Linux Action Show, different than we'd done it with User Air, different than any show that we've ever done on JB. And there was a couple of things that played into that. Both Chris and I have a background in audio and playing with it, and what we are able to actually put out over the air sometimes is a fraction of the quality of what can actually be produced inside of the studio, right? And that was one thing that drove Chris to start producing a lot of his content offline, is he knows that if you have two people and they are doing double-ended recording, so each person is recording locally, and then you bring that into an editor and you clean that recording up, man, you come out with the most pristine product that you can offer, as long as you're using high quality preamps, high quality microphones, high quality recording stuff. He knows that, and once you get that bug, then it's kind of hard to go back. And I wouldn't say I've gone the other direction, but we've kind of wide. I have gone the direction of I am okay taking callers on a 16 kilohertz phone call, even though the audio quality is going to be drastically less than it would be over Mumble or Skype. I would say that the audio quality that comes in for calls over the phones is easily the worst audio quality of any show on the network, and yet we still take calls. I mean, the call queue stacks up, and people listen to the show. And part of that is because I understand my audience. I understand. I thought, and Chris did too. I mean, it was really, the show was more his idea than mine to begin with. We understood that there are these people. There's an audience out there that wants to call in, ask a question, and hear that question answered by an industry expert, and participate in the community, be part of the community, and provide a service to the community. And when I was able to understand that, then I knew, okay, this is the premise of the show. But then as we actually got into the intricacies of it, originally we launched the show with the expectation that we were going to answer newbie questions. We were going to answer questions for the people just getting started with Linux. And within 3 weeks, it was pretty obvious that wasn't going to happen, that the people that were just getting started with Linux weren't really interested in listening to a show about Linux, because they're not interested in Linux yet, because they haven't gotten started with Linux. And the people that were interested,
yeah,
right, yeah, exactly, chicken or the egg. And so then what we augmented to is, well, turns out there's a lot of people that have day-to-day questions about how to get Linux, running on dual monitors or whatever, and those kinds of things I deal with on a daily basis. On my day job. And so to come on the air and talk about those things, well, it turns out there's tons of listeners that want to listen to a show about that, and there's tons of callers that want to call in and ask about that. And so we augmented and we shifted. And I think you're absolutely right. Finding where in that spectrum you want to stay for being technically literate, how in depth you want to cover something, it's something you have to judge for yourself. But it's both a blessing and a curse that the noise floor is so high for the podcast world. There are so many low quality shows that it makes it easy to stand out by putting in just a little bit of effort. If you go buy a Audio-Technica AT 2020 and you go buy a PreSonus audio USB interface, you are talking $200 or $300, and your audio quality is going to be 10 times that of 90% of the podcasts out there. It's not that expensive. It's not that difficult to get good sounding audio. You just have to care. You just have to bother, and then it happens. And so anyway, that's really what we try to do, on this show. So, basically, when we launched when we launched the show, we had a chance to do things a little bit differently. We had a chance to mix things up. And I know what I personally want from a review, and I don't want to listen to some Indian kid drone on for an hour on a radio show about what he likes and what he doesn't like. I mean, that would make an interesting radio show, maybe, for some people who are interested in that. But by the time you sit down at your computer, if you get into that mindset, when you sit down at your computer and you're ready to blow your operating system away, you're going to nuke and pave, and you just want to get to the meat, and you sit down and you say, Should I install Ubuntu 17.10? Is that a good option for me? What can I expect? I think we have created the best distro review that I personally have ever participated in. And we put it up on our video channel, so you can head over there. I guess it's asknoahshow.com and click on the video launcher and check out our video review of Ubuntu 17.10. Here's what it is. It is under 5 minutes, but it covers all of the basics that you can expect to see and feel on the latest version of Ubuntu. Now, if you'd like it, great. That's awesome. Then like and subscribe to the video because we're going to do more of them. And if it's not your cup of tea, then I want to know about it. So email me live@asknoahshow.com. In fact, you can email your questions to live@asknoahshow.com if you have them this hour. We'll take emails as well as phone calls. 855-450-NOAH. That's 855-450-6624. live@asknoahshow.com or the Mumble Room, mumble.jupiterbroadcasting.org. Change the port to .4. Man, that does not roll off my tongue very well. Yeah, it used to be a different web address, and then we had to get like an SSL cert or something, so it changed. I don't know. But yeah, I started off this week, and I started looking and paying attention to all the people I come across in my day job. I cannot find anyone that uses stock GNOME. And so what I came to the conclusion to is that stock GNOME sucks. Now, that's both a good and a bad thing. Because it's a bad thing because as a new user who finds him or herself on stock GNOME, they're going to be lost like a ball in tall weeds. But it's a good thing because ultimately it means that any user can have their perfect desktop. The entire idea of GNOME is to be extensible. And I had to augment the way that I look at this. Over the past couple months, I've started to see GNOME as not so much like a hack job where the basic thing isn't there, so you have to apply all these hacks to make it usable. I started to look at it as there are options, and you can turn the options on or off. But there are so many options that it is impossible or impractical to include all of the options installed by default. So they put them on a website, extensions.gnome.org. And you can simply go there in a web browser, and there's a little button to turn extensions on or off. Ubuntu 17.10 has an exhaustive list of customizations that have been done by Canonical. And I have to eat a little bit of crow. I think very early on when they first made their announcement, I was a guest on another show, and I think my speculation at the time was that they were going to ship stock GNOME, because that was what I had interpreted from Mark Shuttleworth, and obviously I was very, very wrong. They have an extensive list of things that they have done. And it's interesting because as a person who hates stock GNOME, I feel right at home using stock Ubuntu 17.10. And what that tells me is that Canonical has really nailed a distribution for me specifically and my kind of use case, which I think is shared probably by a lot of people who are using a mainstream Linux desktop as their primary driver. And that's not to say that there aren't problems, and we're going to get to those. In fact, so as an aside, the next time that we do a review, I'm going to start calling the first review that we do of a release, I'm going to call it like a first look or something like that. It has always driven me nuts, the people that try to do a review on day one, and because the reality is that you just can't do it. And I learned my lesson the hard way with 1604. There's just no way that you can get all of your nuggets on how an operating system is going to work in just a couple of hours. And the other thing is there are enough changes in between the beta and the final release that you can't even really evaluate the software in the weeks leading up to the release. 1604 was fantastic in the weeks leading up to the release. And then we installed the final release, and it's like, this is completely different. I ran into a lot of problems that I didn't have in the weeks leading up to it. So I think that's how we're going to approach this from now on. And again, I'm interested in feedback, live@asknoahshow.com, or you can even tell me on the air here, 855-450-NOAH. That's 855-450-6624. Let me know. Say, yeah, I think doing a first look and then going back and doing a full review I think that makes sense, or no, I'd rather just get it all in one piece. But yeah, the review that we've done, I'm happy with it. I think it stands. I don't think there's anything I said in there that I have to retract. There are some issues that have cropped up since the time that review has come out, so maybe it's a little overly positive. But again, these are the kind of things that you find out when you actually use it as a daily driver like I'm doing. The advantage of having an IT company which heavily deploys Linux is that we have a lot of real-world knowledge coming in. So we have deployed 1710 on a ton of machines today. We've upgraded machines. We have fresh installed machines. We have cross-migrated machines from other desktop environments. And so we have started to compile a list. These are things that we have run into here at Altispeed. They're things that I've run into personally. They're things that I've talked to my friends on the internet. Problems you might run into in 1710. There's nothing that I would say is so bad that it would keep me from installing 1710, even over 1604, because the sooner that you get onto GNOME, the sooner you can start learning and becoming accustomed to the way that basically most Linux distributions are going to work, because they're, SUSE, Fedora, Red Hat, Ubuntu, they're all using GNOME by default. Arch, even, to a lesser extent, because there is no real default. But Integros is, heavy GNOME people. Top Icons is broke, and I mean big time broke. Discord notifications, not necessarily the notifications, but the count, they're not showing up, the badge numbers, and in some cases, and the thing is, I use that all the time to kind of judge how far behind I am in catching up in various groups. I do the same thing on Telegram. In fact, Telegram's even worse. The Telegram right now, as I'm doing this show, my Telegram icon is not sitting in my top bar, and the problem with that is I don't know if Telegram is even open or not. And so sometimes I'll go back and I'll realize I forgot to start Telegram back up, and I've been missing messages. It's a huge problem. I would imagine it's a simple fix, because Top Icons Plus has worked flawlessly for me in Entargos, so I would assume that it's just a matter of tweaking something. I would imagine, that's a simple fix, but it's a problem right now, let me tell you. Lux encryption. There is this really weird and fairly obvious error that I'm kind of surprised got missed. But basically, during the installer, it forces you to use the US-based layout. And so if you select a different layout during the installation, you're going to wind up with an encrypted drive that you can't decrypt unless you can figure out what your passphrase would be using a US-based keyboard when you were expecting whatever the other layout that you're using. We had a caller last week that was concerned about high DPI under Linux. Well, the good news is that the interface to get high DPI working on 1710 is super straightforward. I was telling him about this little slider window, and you have to drag it to the right or to the left. No more. They just have 100, 125, 175. It's super straightforward. Here's the downside. The downside is that you have to enter the magical incantation on the command line of gsetting space set space org.gnome.mutter space experimental space dash space feature space quote open bracket apostrophe scale dash monitor dash frame buffer apostrophe close bracket quotation mark. And yes, we will have that command in the show notes, and you have to enter all of that to have the options just show up. And I get it, right? Like right in the command. Clearly we are enabling an experimental feature, but here's the problem. In 2017, guess what? High DPI monitors, they're not experimental, they're very much a thing. If you go to Best Buy, half of the monitors they have now are high DPI. So this is a problem that, hopefully gets a lot of attention quickly. I typically tell people to stick with the LTS. I usually stick to the LTS, even myself, on my laptop. We know that most people stick with the LTS, but this time around, I have convinced myself to go all in. And as we do the show right now, I am running 1710 on my laptop. And all of the computers that we work on, which, by the way, actually, so this brings me to another point. This is a personal badge of honor for that Ubuntu 1710 gets. There is a sacred flash drive that is in our shop, and anyone who has ever worked at Altispeed Technologies they know exactly what I'm about to say. This particular flash drive is orange in color, and it has flames on it, and it's connected to one of those little key retractor zipline thingies. And the other end of that retractor is permanently mounted to the shop bench. And whatever distro is on that drive, which, by the way, I personally load those distros onto that drive and I verify it, and nobody is allowed to monkey with that drive. That drive contains the operating system that goes by default on anyone's computer that comes into us. So if you bring us a computer, and let's say your hard drive has failed, and we talk to you and we say, your hard drive has failed, we'll pull all your data off of it, we'll put it onto a backup drive, whatever. Did you want to replace the drive? Yeah, I want to replace. Okay, we'd probably recommend an SSD. All right, yeah, sure, that'd be great. You do anything? I just browse the internet, I check my email. Okay, we'll probably put a 120 gig SSD. If you don't, unless you specify otherwise, that computer is going to leave the shop with whatever OS is on that flash drive. And as of 10 a.m. this morning, that operating system is Ubuntu 17.10. I have used it enough over the last 4 days that I feel very comfortable doing that. And I feel very comfortable after talking to Alan Pope and Martin Wimpress that Canonical really believes GNOME is ready for the average user. And Wayland is on and working by default, and I've seen no major issues. There is you'd have to go back. It's a couple user errors ago. Chris detailed exactly what the issue with lagginess in Wayland is. And this is, again, one of the great things about having all of these people working together, having Red Hat and Canonical all pool resources, because what it's going to mean is ultimately a better experience, and hopefully they'll be able to tackle some of those even complicated problems. We're going to bring Charlie back from the Mumble Room. Hey, Charlie. Hey, Charlie. Welcome to the Ask Noah Show.
Thanks. I just want to comment about how you were saying calling it first look instead of a review. And
yes,
that's what I've done on YouTube as well. I often call stuff first impressions or first look, where I'm testing it on the day and sometimes live. So that's a good idea for anyone. And also, create a list of stuff you want to do on that program or distribution. Like, okay, our checklist is it's got to work on this, it's got to work on that. Does this hardware work? And that way you can, show your people that you're interacting with it ticks off all the boxes.
Yeah, and it's interesting, right? Because what you find out on the first day is sometimes you go into it with a positive attitude or negative attitude, and that somewhat affects what your first impression is. And then over time, the really, earth-shattering problems, they really rise to the top. And then the not-so-serious ones, they kind of fade away, right?
Yeah, that's true. And sometimes I'll even do a video on a product, be software, distribution, or hardware, a year later as a review. And not many people seem to do that, but it's more of we've had a year, we have good experience over that period of time, and our overall review on that year may differ from just using it for a month.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense, and I agree with you. I frequently find that the longer I use something, the more problems that pop up. Although, having used a number of different Linux distributions over a number of years, I really feel like at this point I have gotten to the point in my life where I can tell within the first day or so, judging. I know about on average how many problems to crop up and how serious those problems should feel, and I can pretty much tell at this point. Yeah, this is going to be a real problem, going on, or this is going to work out. And my impression so far of 1710 is that it's rock solid. And part of that is because Canonical is coming back to an actively developed desktop. We're all talking about how great it is that Canonical has gone to GNOME, and it is great. It is absolutely the right decision for them, absolutely the right decision for Linux in general, absolutely the right decision for desktop Linux. But all that said, it's not like Canonical stopped working on Unity and went and started this project called GNOME, or even went back to GNOME as it was 5, 6, 7, whatever it was, 8 years ago when they transitioned into Unity. It's not like they got all of that done in 6 months. They went to a very active community that is actively developing a world-class desktop and tweaked it a little bit. And while a great thing to do is not what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of other people that made that possible. And I think it's important to give a plug to everyone else who has contributed to GNOME over the years while Canonical was off working on Unity. And that's not a put down on Canonical. They have still brought amazing value to the Linux ecosystem, and they continue to do so. And all that is still true. And I'm still over the moon with the direction that Canonical is going and continues to go. But I just feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you to Fedora. Thank you to Arch. Thank you to Red Hat. Thank you to SUSE. Thank you to all of these distributions that have been plugging away at the GNOME desktop. Thank you to all the people that made the extensions to the point that when Canonical wants to put a dock, they can just use dash to dock, and they tweak it a little bit and lock down the version so that it can't be, dynamically updated or updated without, some mechanism of making sure it's going to work. But they had a dash to dock to go from. And thank you to that person who did the dash to dock. Thank you to the person who did Top Icons Plus, so we don't have this stupid drawer coming out at the bottom of our computer. The icons then show up at the top where I expect them to, and where all the rest of my notifications are. Where, frankly, I think GNOME should have put the bar, taskbar, whatever you want to call it. All of this stuff is happening because somebody else did it first, and Canonical took the best parts of that and did an amazing job. Not selling them short. They did a phenomenal job combining all of this stuff into a world-class desktop operating system. But they did it with the help and backing of a lot of other people. And, which Chris and I talked about this a little bit a day ago or so. Fedora is, the Fedora team, the Red Hat team, they're coming out and saying, here's what we're working on and here's what we're doing. And part of that is, it's kind of sad that they're not getting some of the attention that Canonical is getting. Because it really is a team effort. And really, that's ultimately what open source is all about, is that we have these competing projects. We have Unity. We have a team that was devoted to Unity, a team that tried to make Unity all that it can be. And there were people like me that thought that Unity did some things better than any other desktop environment, namely multi-monitor. Even 1710 does not have the same level of multi-monitor support that Unity did. So, anyway, huge thank you to everyone that was involved with that. I think you guys are amazing. Now, I want to talk about something else that's kind of cool. Bitcoin. My favorite show on Jupiter Broadcasting to date is a little show called Plan B. And I think it was probably it is the best show, in my opinion, that JB ever did. And I miss it immensely. And every time, and you can ask him, every time we have a conversation about the direction of the network or where the network's going or what things the network should concentrate on, my first suggestion every single time, I've been very consistent about it, is bring back Plan B. Dollars, currency, does not have any intrinsic value, inherent value. Gold does not have any intrinsic inherent value. In fact, gold is a pretty useless metal. It's a decent conductor, but silver's better and costs less. Gold is a soft metal, so it's not really good for building anything. It's just pretty and shiny. So the intrinsic value of gold is very little, and the intrinsic value of a dollar is even less. It's literally paper that's not even paper, and there's not even any space to write on paper because it's so filled up with green ink stuff. So you can't even use it to take notes. And so all of this stuff leads you to there not being a lot of intrinsic value in currency itself. And so what we have invented is a currency for 2017, and that is what we call cryptocurrencies. And basically what a cryptocurrency is if you think to yourself, how often do I go to the bank and get my paycheck in cash? How many times does my employer pay me in cash? I would imagine, especially if you're under the age of 30, very few of you do that. And I'll bet you if you're under the age of 30, fewer of you yet ever convert the money that you are paid not in cash to cash. It probably stays electronic the entire time. And what Bitcoin is the next evolution of that. So instead of basing it off of what we call fiat currency or basing the digital dollars in your bank account to actual hard currency, it just exists on its own. We control bitcoins. Bitcoins come into existence by people solving math problems. And every time somebody solves a math problem, they are awarded a Bitcoin. It takes about 10 minutes. Well, it takes probably less than that now, but the specification was it should take about 10 minutes to solve a math problem. And the math problems get harder as the more people work on it, and they get easier as the less people work on it to try to keep that 10-minute per Bitcoin thing. And then there's this split that happens every 4 years where the amount of Bitcoins that are released are cut in half. So instead of, one every 10 minutes, maybe we do one every 20 minutes. And there are only a total of 21 million Bitcoins that can ever exist. When you want to spend a Bitcoin, we simply record it on a public ledger. So essentially, we all have like this big spreadsheet, and when somebody makes a purchase, gives a Bitcoin to somebody else, we record that inside of the spreadsheet. And everyone has a copy of that spreadsheet. So in basically what this is like I said, the evolution of currency. In 2017, it just makes sense to have a currency that is based on the premise that it's never going to be turned into a actual dollar. It's a trustless currency. And last week, this trustless currency, which a lot of people have said from day one was going to crash and burn in a fiery death, topped $6,000 per coin. $6,000 per coin. Now, this is to give you some perspective on that. 6 years ago, they were selling for like $40 a coin. A couple years before that, it was like $1, and a couple years before that, it was like hundreds of thousands of coins for a penny. So the growth has been great. Whether or not Bitcoin actually succeeds, cryptocurrency in general has succeeded as a principle. I can send money to Japan instantaneously. I don't have to worry about PayPal. I don't have to worry about converting it from dollars to yen. I don't have to worry about the none of that. I take an address, and it's like email, and I can email somebody money. It's fantastic. And I have gotten so many questions from customers that I've called in, from people I've run into. I'm surprised we haven't got any callers on the air that are asking about it. But basically, here is the lowdown. Should you invest in Bitcoin? No, you should not. If you think Bitcoin is going to make you a fortune, don't. You're going to lose all of your money, and you're going to do it very quickly. Don't invest in Bitcoin. I'm not suggesting that. Do not mine Bitcoin. Do not get into mining Bitcoin if you want to make Bitcoin that way. That's a terrible way to do it. It's very expensive. There are people that are spending hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on Bitcoin mining machines. Don't do it. All of that said, you have an extra $10 and you want to buy some currency and watch it go up because it's fun, and you don't want to worry about all of the, federal trade regulation stuff that it would be with investing in a stock market or something like that, because it's fun, not because you think you're going to make any money, not because it's a good financial decision. It's like gambling, except maybe a little more dangerous. If that's fun to you, go ahead, try it. I think it's actually kind of fun, and I did pay for all my living room furniture that way. So there's that. Mining. I mine Bitcoins because I like mining Bitcoins. It's not cost effective. I pay more money to buy Bitcoins that way, but I like doing it because I think it's fun. And so if you're like me and you like having fun doing these things, then you should give it a shot, and you should check out Bitcoin. And I think Bitcoin is gonna take a bigger place on this show because I'm interested in it, and I think it's really cool, and I think that it's going places. All right, we're gonna go back to the Mumble Room. My good friend Michael Tunnell from VisuX, he's joining us. Hey, Michael, welcome to the Ask Noah Show via Mumble this time.
Hello.
Hey there. Hi.
So I wanted to talk about the extension, the top icon extension thing you talked about for Ubuntu 17.10. That actually, there's a problem with that, and it's a known problem because the reason why some of the stuff that doesn't work is because it's not using Top Icon Plus.
Oh.
It's using an extension that they forked. They're using something called, it's a forked version of something called KStatus Notifier / App Indicator.
That's a good project name.
And the reason why they're doing that is because, it's a fantastic name. It rolls off the tongue. So the reason why they're using that is because that particular extension allows for app indicators to work, specifically app indicators. And the reason they're not using Top Icons Plus is because there's an API that GNOME created for the Top Icons Plus extension, essentially.
Okay.
And unfortunately, the reason why the Top Icons Plus is not used is because that API is being deprecated forever. So GNOME's system tray thing at the bottom left that everyone hates, They hate it too, but they put it in the little tray at the bottom left just so people would hate it, so that it would try to convince people to stop wanting them, so that they can eventually remove it entirely.
That is the dumbest explanation of anything I have ever heard in my life. Not you, but this idea that they want to take something so useful and make it a pain so that I want to get rid of something so useful.
Pretty much, exactly. Their GTK4 has that API removed entirely, so that Top Icons Plus will just break as soon as it switches over. So that's why they're using the other thing so that to make the app indicators work in the future.
What are the chances that this gets solved?
But this what?
What are the chances that this problem gets solved in relatively short order? Is it not that simple?
It is definitely possible. Well, the main thing is that there's going to be a lot of work for the app indicators. So, and that's possible because if you look at the Unity setup, they pretty much made every application, even if it didn't have an app indicator support, to work with app indicators. So they just kind of need to do it again through this new extension.
Would
it is possible. Whether it'll be with LTS or not, it's hard to tell.
Okay, wow. So even 6 months out. What do you think the possibility of them going back to however it was that Unity was implementing those icons and the heads-up display and stuff? I know there's a lot of people that really miss that. I guess what are the chances of that coming to GNOME? Yeah.
It's unlikely because they did it through the shell. And because the GNOME shell doesn't support anything like that, they'd have to rebuild the shell. It's the same reason why the HUD is pretty much impossible to be done in GNOME, because it requires a rewrite of the shell.
Gotcha. All right. Well, hey, Michael, VisuX.com, thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. You might notice if you look at the way that our live streaming, all of those graphics, that stuff is done, the Ask Noah dashboard, AskNoahShow.com, all done by VisuX. We don't work with anyone else because Michael does a great job. And thanks for coming by the show and sharing that with us.
Absolutely.
Cool. Thanks for the call. Garrett is calling from Portland, Oregon. Hey, Garrett, welcome to the Ask Noah Show.
Hi, Noah. I have what is hopefully a quick question.
Okay.
I am trying to recover data from an XFS file system. I'm using PhotoRec, and I'm coming up with a lot of .apple files and .xfs files. And while they're taking up about 12K each, but it's adding up and it's taking up a lot of space. I'm wondering what they are and whether I can get rid of them.
I don't know is the honest answer to you. I guess what I would do is are there a lot of them? I mean, 12K is not that big.
Several thousand.
Really? Okay.
Upwards of 6.
What's the total space they're occupying?
Well, I've had to split drives. So I've had to stop the PhotoRec process and then do it on a terabyte drive. So I haven't been able to go through all the files, but maybe a couple hundred gigs.
Okay, so not that. So here's always my modus operandi. First thing I like to do, Garrett, is move all of my files over to a, like a 1 terabyte drive, 2 terabyte drive, whatever, because it's cheap enough to buy at Best Buy. And then once I have a clean copy of all that stuff, then I go and start actually pulling the files that the user actually needs back. So, I need this photo, or I need that thing. And that way, if those if those hidden files, .xfs, .apple, if those files end up being important, you always have them to go back to. And you could store, even if it was, 2 terabytes, you could store that for probably $50. And then always just have and just pull the files you actually need. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's...
Okay. Yeah, sorry.
No, yeah, that's fine. I just want to make sure I actually answered your question. It's a confusing thing. Data recovery is always a pain because you never quite know what you're going to get, and that's even worse when it's RAID. Hey guys, follow us on Twitter at Ask Noah Show. Make sure to check out that video review, AskNoahShow.com. Huge thanks to Sarah, our call screener, who's doing double duty today. Ben, our producer, Rakai, our video editor. We hand you off to Crosspoint coming up next on Logos Radio, KEQQ, 88.3 LPFM, Grand Forks. Hey, Mumble Room. Thanks a lot for the first inaugural Ask Noah show thing.
It worked out. It actually worked out well. I like how when you come back to the Mumble Room, it also pings here too.
Oh, does it beep in there? Oh, that's cool. Yeah, it was kind of interesting. I don't know. You're in the admin group, I think, so you probably saw the picture, but I'll post it in the regular Mumble Telegram group too. But yeah, basically, it was interesting because it took me all night to get the stupid thing set up, and cost me way more money than it probably should have. But yeah.
How come the audio quality is so horrible, though?
Because it's coming over a phone line. That's why. It's
what I thought. My thought was like, this sounds like a phone line.
Yeah,
that explains why you're spending money on it.
Yeah, well, yeah. The thing is too is I don't know if Fressel, if you're in the admin group or not, but I was explaining too, like basically, we've got all of these controls and auto leveling and all this auto mute and these things where I can take people on and off the air super smoothly. However, there's like nobody is making stuff like that for Mumble because it's just nobody's doing what we're doing. And so it's like, how do I do a talk show but have all those same controls that I have on phone system, but have it in Mumble? And the only way I could think to do that was to tie Mumble as a phone extension that dials into the system. So you guys are actually sitting on a SIP line that is dialed into the studio here. And it's funny too because so Sarah, she's like, the music's too loud, it's hard for me to screen people. And I'm like, and she's like, the guys in Mumble are saying, turn it off from continuous transmit to push to talk. And I'm like, yeah, I'd love to. Here's the problem. That box is sitting in my basement at home 3 miles away. I can't change anything on it. It's just...
I fixed it before you...
Oh, did you?
Before you came back to that. As soon as I got here, I fixed it because,
Thank you.
I gave Sarah access to deafen and mute you and stuff.
Sweet.
If it got to the point where she had to ask someone.
Oh, perfect.
So she can now do that anytime.
Awesome.
The only thing I would change about this is there's a separate connection for in and out on Mumble, so we can actually hear you in better quality, and then because it goes properly over the internet, so we have the nice bitrate, and then input from Mumble to you goes over the phone line.
What is that? What was that?
Yeah, the audio is good enough. I don't care.
Did anyone else hear that phone thing? Was that on my?
Yes. I think Charlie did it.
Oh, yeah. No, here's the thing. They have a really expensive. I was at a broadcasting conference. They have a really expensive box that will basically let me connect Mumble into the regular thing. The problem is it's like $6,000, and it's like, I don't know. If there's enough people that show up like on continuous basis, I guess we'd probably look into it. But like at the moment, it's like, man, that is a lot of money to spend. But anyway, thank you very much for those of you who showed up. I really
spending any money is actually nice that you're doing that because I wouldn't even. I would have suggested against that, honestly.
Yeah, well, it was. Yeah, I mean,
thanks for setting it up. It worked good.
Yeah, I think what it amounts to is it's like, so I think I spent about $750, maybe $800 on what we have now, and it's like I did it because I wanted to see if I could do it. And I have another project in mind, which is kind of what actually makes it worth it money-wise. But yeah, but I was looking at it, I was like, and when I got done, I was like, man, for the actual quality that we're actually gonna capture off of this thing, it's like I could have done a way better job with just an audio interface plugged into a mixer and just have like a mute key. I suppose is really it's probably a better way to do it. Anyway, just wanted to say thank you very much, and I'm going to take off here. But I really appreciate everyone. No, actually, you know what? I can't take off until Rick Hyde takes me off the... we're on the air. I just remembered that. We are done. I forget that he has...
Hello.
Yeah, you guys are all on the live stream. Yeah, it was... he's got... I forget that... the radio station... I have my own studio now, so I don't do the show from the radio station anymore. And we have a connection, IP connection between us, and exactly at 6 o'clock, they pick up my feed and put me out over on the air. On JB, I forget
to be ready regardless.
Yeah, right. But the other side of that is at 7 o'clock, exactly on the dot, they just take me off. So like as soon as the outro, like actually before the outro music even finishes, I'm already off the air. So I don't really have to worry anything there. I always forget that I have to tell Rick Hyde to take me off the JB stream. And actually, he was last seen 1 hour ago. And he's not responding, so this is great. I guess I'm going to turn some music on, and I'll just wait for him to respond. Then he can take me off the air. He got home. He was at TwitchCon, so I bet he's asleep. Well, thanks again, guys. I guess I'm going to go figure out what I'm going to play on the JB live stream until Rikai Wakey.
Play back a previous episode.
yeah, exactly. All right, guys, take care.
Rikai has to do that.